This is the B-Team Podcast, brought to you by Jackrabbit Illustrated. The B-Team is presented by Drake's Place in Battle, South Dakota, and sponsored by Jackrabbit Central and Shenanigans in Sioux Falls. Now, here are your B-Team hosts, Brendan and Ben.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome in. We are the B-Team with Jackrabbit Illustrated, brought to you by our title sponsors, Cottonwood Bistro and Drake's Place, of course, with their delicious food up in Battle, South Dakota. We are part of the FCS Fans Nation network of podcasts, and we are more than excited to bring to you a hastily brought together playoff edition, Thanksgiving week edition podcast, and it's been a mess for everybody. Chad was almost late, and he's always way ahead of time. And Ben, you've got your own set of life issues, and I am broadcasting from my parents' bedroom in Wisconsin here, while everybody else stays upstairs and kind of hangs out. So. But Ben, go ahead and tell about your little latest escapade that led to your earliest appearance, actually.
Yeah, I've got a little heater issue going on, and of course, it always happens like right before a holiday. Like nobody's going to be open tomorrow. Pretty much everybody's going to be open or closed Friday too, and so I figured out. I think it's my blower motor capacitor. I went and got one from a local guy right before this, so. We'll everybody keep their fingers crossed that that's the fix, and we'll be with heat through the weekend. So,
and I was busy eating a brisket sandwich at Shenanigans, so they should be happy dropping a little coin at that wonderful sponsor of ours. It was good. It wasn't your brisket though. Most isn't.
I just don't order brisket very often when I'm out and about, unless I'm in Texas. I just really don't. But I used to get Big Rig barbecues all the time, actually, in Sioux Falls. That was really good. But
it does seem most places brisket is dry.
Yeah,
it's hard. Like it's hard.
Well, they got to make it. And
that's what I mean. Yeah.
It's got to sit around. It's not like you can eat it straight off the smoker like when Brendan does it.
Well, the trick is with that, since we're going off topic already. The trick is if you're going to a barbecue place and they don't have their hours based off of when we run out, we're done, then you're not going to get the best barbecue, because they're having to have it. They're having to make a whole pile of it and then have it sit in warmers, and it's going to dry out and all that stuff. It's just the way it goes. There's a reason the best barbecue joints are like, once we're out, because you can't just whip up a brisket in 10 minutes.
Well, Famous Dave's tells me they're real good barbecue.
I refuse. Actually, now you made it worse. Now I got another story.
Sorry.
Up by my folks' place in Hayward, Wisconsin, the original Famous Dave has his restaurant up here. After he sold out, it was a Famous Dave's, but then it mysteriously burned down right about the time his non-compete clause was up. And then he had a brand new smoker barbecue place built. And that place was good, but compared to the rest of the Famous Dave's, well, maybe they'll sponsor us someday. So, I'm not gonna throw darts. I know Drake's Place is far better than Famous Dave's, and it's not even close. I'll bring that full circle.
Yeah, welcome everybody to BBQ Talk with Brendan.
Well, we could talk about frozen custard and butter burgers too.
Yeah,
100 butter the other night. So.
Yeah, basketball team got 100 butter. My mom tells people don't ask me about smoking things when, like, family members. She told my grandma, like, just don't bring it up. Don't.
Yeah, your wife even chimed in. Oh no, here we go.
Yeah, right. That's the wrong way. All of a sudden, this goes sideways.
Yeah, and Scott wants us to get on with the show here, so we will. All right.
No, Patrick likes it, so get out of here. We're split off. We're dividing BT Mafia right now. We got a whole mess.
Food, no food. All right. Anyway, we're happy because we got the big win against UND on Saturday, which as we tried to tell people going into it, it's not a given, and it wasn't. It was a battle.
Yeah.
And that's a team that finished in the lower half of the Missouri Valley, but it's a good team. They would have made a lot of noise in the playoffs against against probably, I don't know, at least half the first round teams they would have made some noise against. So that was a good win anyway you see it.
Yeah, you look back on it, and yeah, you could say, I know on Matt Zimmer on his podcast said it was kind of almost lackadaisical, but on the flip side, UND didn't lose to a single one of the top 4 teams in the Missouri Valley Conference by more than a touchdown. Like, none of them. It was a one-possession game, just like ours, for almost every game. They're one of those teams where they were like a play away in most games. I'm not going to go into the officiating. Matt and Kyle did a great job of going over that. I don't think that's necessary. Was that probably a touchdown? Yeah, I think so. But it's also kind of one of those things that I like to say all the time is, if you're the better team, you'll win anyways. And that's what the Jacks did. They went out, responded, stopped them, marched back down, and scored a touchdown anyways. So, but overall, it was what needed to happen. Chris played a good game. I think the Hogs had a pretty good game. It was nice seeing Isaiah. Isaiah ripped off some big gash yardage. Pierre had some great runs. Overall, I think it was a pretty good game overall by the whole team. I mean, this wasn't like getting, say, beat 52 to 20 or something for the last game of the year, because that would be really embarrassing.
So speaking of which, we'll recap last weekend's games in a bit, but I did want to mention it was awesome seeing Isaiah Davis back out there. You could tell he was getting going, and especially in the second half, I think we started to find our identity a little bit. The touchdown that should have been would have made it. I believe that would have been 17 points in the second half, which is a good half. And I think we saw them switch from that RPO look to more of a pistol back look, and it seemed to really work. It works well with Davis, and I think it even worked better with Pierre. Guys were just hitting holes better. It seemed like the holes were opening up and we could hit them before they collapsed. So I expect to see more of that on Saturday. But overall, it was good to see. Like Patrick says, the Valley is so deep this year, and it's true. I mean, you saw it this weekend. I mean, we can roll into recapping the games from last weekend. The one we'll touch on first in terms of the Valley being deep is Youngstown State whooping Southern Illinois,
right,
35-18. And Southern Illinois is a team that they weren't a lock if they lost. They ended up being the last two into the playoffs, so they almost played themselves out of a playoff spot against Youngstown State, a team that didn't really have much to play for. So it'll be interesting to see how Southern Illinois bounces back after that one. But the picks, do you realize what transpired over last weekend?
Bad weekend. I guarantee we had a bad weekend.
Well, I had what some would call a bad weekend. I was 2-7, which isn't good by any stretch of the imagination.
Some would call it. Not everybody, but some people would call it bad.
But what's really bad, is almost it's so bad it's hard to do. Brendan went 0-9.
Woo!
That is something.
That's terrible.
Something
oh my God!
To behold.
You almost have to know what you're doing to be that bad.
Yeah.
You couldn't actively try to be that bad and nail it that good.
Yeah. So that's fun. I could tell you definitely picked the first three games with what you wanted to happen. Well, two of them anyway. we both picked Montana State. Montana had a big statement win. They went into Montana State and won, or no, they were at Montana and won 29-10. That was a statement for Montana. It'll be interesting again to see how Montana State bounces back from that going into playoffs. They held on to an 8 seed. We'll show you the playoff bracket in a little bit. East Tennessee, they did what they needed to do. They held on against Mercer. That was a very close game, 38-35. Mercer ended up covering that. Sacramento State beat UC Davis 27-7. They secured their 4 seed, and we'll talk about them later. Dixie State covered by 0.5 point.
Of course they did.
Of
course they did. Hey, I went 0-9 by 0.5 point. This is garbage. The Podfather says we may need to put a disclaimer on our pick segments. You guys are losing people's houses.
Right.
Or, because this was originally Fade Brendan, if they listen to the name of the segment, they're buying new houses, you know? If they're fading Brendan, they're having a pretty good year. I mean, that was a hell of a week for them if they faded me.
Exactly. Patrick mentions, can't believe Mercer didn't get into the playoffs. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy if they win that game. I mean, they're for sure in, and they almost won it.
Yeah, I think part of the sticky wicket there was I believe they ended the season at 7-4, but one of their wins was against Point University, who I think the whole SoCon should probably stop scheduling. I mean, there's a lot of, you know, it's one of those things where it sucks. But that's also the way the rules are. And when you don't have any statement wins, do I necessarily think you and I should have been in over them? No, but when you look at the teams that were left, they're the only ones with big wins. And compared to a team like Mercer, it's just brutal. And it sucks for the team and the coaching staff. The administration just needs to schedule better. Is what that boils down to, and it's frustrating. We've seen it happen to other teams before too. It could have happened to the Jacks this year. You know, we talked about that we were talking about that because technically, we only had 7 wins with the Lindenwood game on there. You know, and that's why winning this last game was so important. So,
right. And that's, you know, we talk about, you know, people talk about our cupcakes we schedule in out of conference. They can't do that because of their conference. And so it's just it's a different way of scheduling based on what conference you're in. So the other Missouri Valley games that happened, Indiana State went on a good note. They beat Illinois State, who was kind of hot, 15-10. Yeah, Illinois State.
That was a smart pick I made there. Illinois State was rolling, and then
they sure were.
Well, shut up. Get out of here. Get out of here.
You and I covered by a lot, 41-3. And we both picked Western Illinois, obviously. And then we mentioned Youngstown State whooped SIU, and ESU whooped USD. I think a little bit of a hangover there from the game against us. You know, we've seen it before, whether it's games against us or NDSU. Especially when you have to go play one or the other after that game. It's just, you know, those games take a physical toll on you, and it's tough to do that 2 games in a row.
Yeah, absolutely. And they fell behind right away by a pile of points. And, you know, that's one of those games where I hope they both could lose, but we all know that can't happen. And so I just kind of gritted my teeth and hoped and figured NDSU would win anyways, but hoped they would win so we didn't have to deal with them both being seeds, because I think USD had a real argument at being a seed. But with them losing, and especially all the losses like Mercer and everything like that, that made the bubble just all of a sudden become crazy clear, and seeds became pretty easy. So it was wild. I mean,
Jim asks, go ahead.
Jim asks, is there any weight on a D2 win when that team is in the D2 playoffs? Absolutely not. There's none. Any D2 game, any non-Division I game, because some Pioneer schools play D3 schools and still manage to lose. But there's no weight given to that whatsoever. The only weight is the amount of money that they make off the gate. That's the only weight we get out of that. So and that's across the board nationally. That could have come into play for Eastern Washington getting a seed because they played a D2 team. And historically, that's why SDSU, we've been so good at not scheduling lower division opponents because they don't count like that, and that can hurt your seeds and playoff chances and everything like that. We just kind of got the short end of the stick because Tarleton's a bunch of dinks and canceled on us last minute. And I think my daughter's watching this episode, so I'm going to behave a little better. But you just don't get anything out of it besides a tune-up game, really.
Yeah, Patrick mentions he thinks UNI is a better team than Mercer, but he thought the SoCon deserved 2 teams this year. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, especially when the Valley's getting six teams in, it's tough for those other conferences. Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, if you look at it from the point of, I mean, like you said, UNI is a better team and probably deserved it regardless of conference. So,
the SoCon, I agree, definitely. Especially a couple weeks ago, felt like it deserved possibly three teams in the playoffs and not just one. But on the flip side, those teams didn't get the job done, is what it boils down to. Like you can have if SDSU lost this weekend, now the Valley doesn't have 6 teams, we got 5 teams, and UNI probably doesn't make it either. It might not make it either. Every team it felt like every team that needed to win this weekend to earn their spot in the playoffs lost, except for UNI. Yeah, that's what happens,
And every team that we needed to lose to get a seed potentially
won by a lot. Except for ETSU, that was a close game.
I was say ETSU, yeah.
But everybody else, they were kind of no doubters. I was hanging on to that ETSU one, and it didn't happen. But do we want to get into what we think, how the bracket went and how it's set up and all that?
Well, let's do it. The last one I had was SDSU. Obviously, we thought that 14.5 point spread was a little big against UND. We didn't cover it. It didn't stop us from picking them and from Brendan from going 0-9 and in the regular season with a bang. But the good news is he only lost. Sadly, he only lost 2 picks to me. I only went 2-7, so I didn't gain a whole lot.
Yeah, you're crowing pretty hard here. This is like the Jags talking trash to the Jets right now. Like,
you gotta, when you go 0-9, man, that's something.
Well, I did get those 2 thanks to that half of a point on that.
I picked Missouri State too, man. That wasn't the one I got. I had Mercer and Sac State for you. But anyway, let's move on. So after Matt says fade B team, get rich. Might as well.
That's it. That's right.
So after we beat UND, we know we're in the playoffs. We know we're probably not going to get a seed. So then we're sitting there waiting, like, okay, who are we going to play? Are we going to host a game? Because none of that was a guarantee. And if you're like me, I was sitting watching it, and I saw the way the bracket was falling in that second quadrant, with Villanova and Sac State being the 4 and 5 seeds there, and the other teams that were in it. And once UC Davis popped up, there was one more spot in that quadrant, and I was like, man, if this is our spot, I like it a lot. And I bet they could have heard me in Brookings with how loud I yelled when South Dakota State came up on there. Because not only do we get a home game, but the quadrant that we're in just seems to have played out pretty well for us. So, I was pumped when we came across on the screen there.
Yeah, it's interesting how that looked, because really you're thinking, if you look historically, regionally, with how the regions and everything work out for the playoffs, they try to keep everyone within 400 miles for that bus trip, feeding into those bus trips, right? And that's why we've gone to Fargo so many times. And then, the other option we usually have is Montana. So I was really surprised that we didn't end up getting fed into Montana, but the UNI Eastern Washington makes sense because Eastern Washington's fairly close to Montana. I think they can bus there. So when I saw that, and NDSU's AD is on the committee. That is something important to remember because I hear these fans of the team down south going, well, we got a screw job. Why do we got to face another Missouri Valley Conference opponent, and then we got to go to Fargo? Welcome to like 6 of our playoff years, bud. All right, we've gone through that. Get out of here. But I promise you, the NDSU AD on there was like, you have 2 options for a bus trip to Fargo now on SDSU and USD. Absolutely not SDSU.
Right.
Absolutely not, because it's happened. That NDSU fans want nothing to do with us up there, and it's not even. And it's not. This isn't even me being like arrogant and going, "Oh, they don't want to face us because we're going to beat them." I mean, I do believe that we're not a good matchup for them, but I do believe that they're just tired of us being up there. And when you just beat a team by like a billion, you probably facing them or the other team you haven't faced in conference yet looks like a little bit better of a draw, because the reality is they were going to get an MVFC team run up to him anyways. So I guarantee you he put his foot down and didn't want SDSU, so they're getting USD's going up there, and that's the way it is. And when you call that a screw job, it's just a lack of understanding of how the committee works, because they're always going to do those bus trips, and it was us or USD, and USD just so happened they didn't play Southern Illinois, and that was kind of a blessing. It could possibly be a blessing for them this year. We're about to find out in a couple days. And so naturally that made it a little easier for them to feed both Missouri Valley teams into there instead of just ourselves. So it makes sense.
Yeah, Patrick mentions here Sac State is not the 4th best team in the nation. Couldn't believe they're a 4 seed with their strength of schedule. Yeah, I mean, I think I agree. You know, we were talking about, you know, regardless of where they were seeded, what's kind of the power ranking of those seeds. And realistically, I think we said probably 6 or 7, you know, as far as power ranking goes. But winning the Big Sky definitely held some weight. Even with that, you know, I think they were in a tough spot because they weren't going to put Montana above them. If Montana didn't win the Big Sky, they're not going to put them above Sac State. And so it was just kind of like, and it probably ended up being a process of elimination. Well, it's like, well,
Sac beat Montana.
Right. Yeah. So you're not going to put them below Montana.
Right.
And, you know, I mean, you could flip-flop Villanova and Sac State for the 4 or 5 seed maybe, but it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the only real option they might have had there when it comes to juggling those 3 Big Sky teams would have been putting Montana State over Montana and Sac State, which would have been a real bad look the day after Montana State gets slapped by Montana. So
that's the thing. Their hands were almost tied at that point.
Right. So the seeds make sense. The reality is when you're playing a seeded team, you're playing a good football team. So we're not making light of Sac State by any stretch. We're not looking past UC Davis, because UC Davis was 1 win away from being a seed as well and knocking out one of those other Big Sky teams for the seed. So, but I do think it's a general consensus that the talent level that is on SDSU this year, combined with this draw and getting a home team, we might have the best shot of any team since James Madison to be the first unseeded team since James Madison, like 2004, to make a run to the national championship game.
Right.
So
let's pull up the what do you got here, Chad?
He's got, looks like
the Sagarin ratings.
The Sagarin. There we go. Right on. And
Sam Houston is 87th. Montana 76th. South Dakota State is 93rd. Somehow Monmouth is 95th. So I don't know. Take these ratings for what they're worth. Let's pull up the bracket there, Chad. All right. So let's start in the top left there. So Sam Houston got the 1 seed, which, some people think it was controversial based on the strength of schedule this year, but I think we can all agree if you go undefeated the year after a national championship, you probably deserve the 1 seed. They got it. They get the winner of Stephen F. Austin and Incarnate Word. The Stephen F. Austin one's interesting because they did give Sam Houston a little fit when they played earlier this year. However, Schmid was not playing in that game, and he makes a huge difference. So I don't know how much you can look into that. That'll be an interesting first-round matchup, I think, between Stephen F. Austin and Incarnate Word.
Yeah, I 100% agree because Stephen F. Austin's definitely up on the upswing, but Incarnate Word, I mean, they did beat Southeastern Louisiana just a couple weeks ago in the most ridiculous offensive output I've ever seen between two quarterbacks. So that'll be an interesting game to watch. I want Stephen F. Austin to win, to just get a Battle of Piney Woods rematch a little bit. But that's kind of a tough one to call. I think that's going to be a fun first round matchup to watch.
Yeah, we won't make any predictions yet. We'll pick spreads on all the 8 first round games a little bit later. The other part of that quadrant, Montana State got the 8 seed, and UT the winner of UT Martin and Missouri State will go to Montana State. Missouri State is an interesting team here. They have had a good season and are playing well, and if they can assuming they get past the UT Martin, I think they're going to give Montana State some fits.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, outside of NDSU, arguably the team you don't want to face is possible to have a conversation between us and Missouri State as the number 1 team and unseeded Missouri Valley team that you don't want to have in your bracket. Because, I mean, they've got big wins this year. They've got a whole bunch of big wins this year. So Montana State, I'm sure, isn't too thrilled about having them on their side of the bracket.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I would think in that quadrant, I think Sam Houston is the heavy favorite. But then after that, I think you'd have to go maybe even 50-50 Montana State or Missouri State. Because that's, even though it's at Missouri State, that's going to be a tough game, like I said. So it'll be interesting, assuming Missouri State wins that first one, see who plays Sam Houston, and then what they can do against Sam Houston, who knows?
Right, and the tough part, Sam Houston's never lost a home playoff game in front of all 7,000 fans that they've averaged all year, which is interesting. But shade. But I think Montana State probably wins with it being at home, but it will be interesting to see what sort of fight, because I don't think it'll be a blowout when they play Sam Houston by any stretch. I mean, they're good teams. The FCS is just really deep this year, so I think all these playoff games are going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I don't think Sam Houston is blowing out either of those teams, Montana State or Missouri State, whichever one they get. So definitely not a super easy path for them to the semis anyway. Let's go over to the NDSU quadrant. You've got NDSU with the 2 seed. That was a big deal for them, getting that over JMU. There was a little bit of controversy there, but I think it was the right thing for the community to do, to put them at the 2 seed based on the resumes. And then the winner of Southern Illinois and USD will get fed to Fargo. USD gets a home playoff game. That one is going to be, I don't know what to think of SIU anymore after they look like they did against Youngstown, but that'll be an interesting game, and I have no idea how I'm going to pick that one.
Right. If I'm looking at it, I think I would, besides my obvious personal feelings about the team that's getting its first home game since before I was born, and almost half the United States population was born. Southern Illinois, I think, has a better setup. Their team is a better matchup against NDSU than that Yotes are, because they're just able to score more points, get ahead, and make NDSU chase. right now they're just not playing that well. Patrick says, I don't think SIU is as good as they seem. We watched them. First half, Southern Illinois wasn't great. Second half, Southern Illinois against SDSU was a lot better. But we also saw the run they made in the spring. They didn't look that great during the spring outside of their game against NDSU in Carbondale. And then they went on this big tear and beat Weber. I don't think either of us expected them to go and beat Weber at Weber. So I could see them going into USD to win and winning that and going up to Fargo and giving them some fits up there. But, really in the end, I think the thing that – no, it doesn't suck because I don't want any Missouri Valley teams to win once it's the playoffs. So, if I have to pick a team to make it through, I would really appreciate it if it was the Flying Dogs Who Eat Children, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think SIU, they're more inconsistent, but I think they're more dangerous. If they're playing well, they're way more dangerous than the USD team, and I think have a better potential of beating NDSU. The other half of that bracket, is pretty light, in my opinion. It's East Tennessee gets a 7 seed, and they get fed the winner of Davidson at Kennesaw State. I think Kennesaw State's going to win that first game pretty easily, and then it'll be interesting to see that matchup between them and East Tennessee. There'll be a lot of rushing yards in that one. But ultimately, I don't think any of these teams have a chance, assuming NDSU makes it to the quarters. I don't think any of these teams have a chance to beat NDSU and Fargo to make it to the semis.
Yeah, I don't think any of those teams keep it within 30 points. In Fargo, those teams want to be cheering hard for Southern Illinois to win.
Right.
And I think Scott Russ just said SIU seems to come up for big games, and they do. They are kind of one of those emotional teams. So obviously we're kind of done talking to them, but I could see them getting up. And Patrick says Kennesaw can go on a little run. A little run to like the quarters, I could see.
I could see them beating East Tennessee.
Yeah, reality is outside of that first game that NDSU is going to have, the rest of the teams in in the bracket are teams that they want to face because they're going to try to run the ball. And one thing NDSU is great at is stopping running the ball and then steamrolling you. And unless your team is built to the level of what SDSU or JMU or Sam Houston have built their programs to, it's just not going to go well. And SoCon and Big South teams just aren't there.
Right. Yep, I agree. And then we move on to the 3-seed quadrant, James Madison's quadrant, which I believe is the toughest out of all 4 quadrants. James Madison gets a 3 seed. They get the winner of Florida A&M, which is a new team to the playoffs. Have they made it before?
Florida A&M has made it before. It was a long time ago. And the backstory for folks who don't know with Florida A&M or any SWAC school, the SWAC has its own conference championship game. So the 2 teams that play in that are already out. And then their conference champion goes to the Celebration Bowl, which is between the MEAC and the SWAC for the HBCU's championship game. So really for a SWAC team to get into the playoffs is a really hard thing to do because none of their top 2 teams from the SWAC are getting picked. So their third team has to be playoff caliber, which, as we've seen outside of power conferences, doesn't happen very often outside of the big 3. So they jumped in. They got in. I think they were 9-2 this year. I'll be interested to see how they do. I just think Southern Illinois is good, or Southeastern is going to do really well.
Yeah, Patrick, thank you. He mentions in the late 90s they made it like 5 years straight. And he said he believes they have the longest playoff drought in the field this year, which makes sense. Do we know when the last time a SWAC school made it?
South Carolina A&T maybe, or are they a MEAC?
I don't even know.
or not A&T, but yeah. The HBCU's part of the reason I don't think they haven't had a lot of success in the playoffs since like the 90s. Just not a lot of wins there. So it's nice to see those teams in the playoffs. I wish the Celebration Bowl, from a selfish perspective myself, I wish Celebration Bowl didn't exist so we could see the top HBCUs jump in. NCA&T would have been that team for the last 5-6 years. Obviously, we saw that didn't quite go as they planned when they jumped into the Big South this year. But best of luck to them. It's a tough draw, but like you said, that whole quadrant outside of A&M, who they could prove to be the best team in that quadrant, but realistically speaking, every one of those other teams in there you could see going on a run and was in a conversation for a seat at some point.
Yeah, so Florida A&M has to go to Southeastern Louisiana, who has the Walter Payton candidate Cole Kelly, who can throw for a bajillion yards a game.
Right.
That's going to be a tough first game for Florida A&M. And then it'll be real interesting seeing them play JMU. I mean,
yes,
assuming Southeastern Louisiana wins, but it'd be crazy to see him go off and beat JMU. It'll be a tough ask, but it'll be fun to watch.
I would pee my panties laughing if that happened.
Right.
I
bye JMU.
Right. On the way out the door.
Right.
Their pride, because back when Sam Houston State was, Jeremiah Briscoe was putting up gaudy numbers and winning all the Walter Payton awards and everything. Then they went up to JMU, got absolutely roadhouse.
Right.
And they were a very similar team to what Southeastern Louisiana is. So they've always called it the Softland ever since and made fun of them and everything. So God forbid Southeastern Louisiana went and beat JMU as the 3 seed, and that I'd die laughing. Jamie Williams, I love you, man. Your fan base has a little bit of Bison effect where they're just kind of obnoxious. So man, if they losing to Southeastern Louisiana on the way out the door would be hilarious.
Yes, it would.
And there's a real possibility. I mean, they start hitting.
If
their offense starts to click with Cole Kelly, who looks to be a real deal NFL prospect quarterback, I think he's like 6'7" or something silly. If that offense starts to click, man, JMU's not going to be able to keep up.
Right. Yep. And then we go to the other part of that bracket, which is 6 seed Montana. And they get the winner of Northern Iowa at Eastern Washington, which I think this is the toughest 3-team pod in the whole bracket.
Yep.
Even though Northern Iowa was the last two, maybe the last team in the playoffs, we know how tough they are and how well they can play. They have been inconsistent this year, but we know they always get up for the playoffs. So it's going to be tough to go into Eastern Washington and beat them. But, I mean, if anybody can do it, UNI is one of the teams.
Yeah. UNI, as we know all too well, is fully capable of beating anybody. And I think it was Kyler Neal said on the FCS Fans Nation Bracket Reaction podcast, UNI is capable of beating anybody in the top 25 any day of the week, but they're also capable of losing to anybody in the country any day of the week. It depends which one shows up. Because, I mean, some of their losses to the end of the year was like, what are you guys doing? But, UNI could certainly go out. They're the type of team that Eastern Washington struggled with. Real good defense with good pass defense, and a punishing line. They very much have a real shot in that game. A friend of mine who's a UNI fan is super pissed because then they have the opportunity to go to Montana and go 0-8 against Montana historically.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Dallas mentioned, hey Dallas, agreed.
Hey,
Montana
Dallas.
got a rough draw. yeah, I mean, that's no matter who wins that game, they're going to have a tough team coming into Montana to play. I do think it'll probably be Eastern Washington, but
yes,
I can see Eastern Washington going on a big run. I think Eric Berrier is very talented, and I think that Eastern Washington probably should have got a seed. I know why they didn't, but they were probably the first team on the outside looking into the seeds.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a team along with us that is very capable of going on a run, being unseeded.
Well, that bracket that I saw yours, was that shared publicly or was that in our group?
That was just in our group.
So I should not tell everyone the ridiculous amount of faith you have in Eastern Washington. Or are we going to save this for later?
We'll save it for a little later. After we make our picks of the first round games, we'll just say who our picks to be in the championship are.
All right.
So then we get to our quadrant, which I said that JMU's was the easiest quadrant, or the most difficult quadrant. I think we got the easiest quadrant. I think that power ranking wise, I think that Sac State and Villanova are like the maybe 6 and 7 as far as the top 8, and they got the 4 and 5 seed, and we ended up in their quadrant. Villanova is the 5 seed. They get fed the winner of Sacred Heart at Holy Cross. I don't think it matters who wins that first game. I don't think they have a chance against Villanova. Do you?
No. Well, Holy Cross is going to win that game. And people forget Holy Cross had an FBS win this year. In the beginning of the year, they won an FBS game. And they beat I believe they beat an Ivy League school too, which Patriot League teams don't do terribly often. So, I don't think it's going to happen, but I also remember a CAA team leading into a game that we were going to be on the road. It was Towson, I believe, losing to Duquesne in the game leading up to our matchup with them, and we ended up getting a home game out of it. So I wouldn't pass out if it happened.
I mean, it'd be great because if we get that far, it'd be a potential home game for us. Matt asks, you guys see the Eastern Washington receiver running his mouth about Montana already? I did not see that, but I like it. But they better worry about UNI first.
Yeah, go ahead. Yap about UNI because, boy, that's going to be a mistake if you're focused on that one. That's If they're already doing that, you're really going to regret your bracket. Yes, if they're already focused on that. How much playoff experience does UNI have, though, really? They have enough experience that I think they've only lost a first round game once. And if you're going to, I don't think we are the fan base to be chirping about UNI playoff experience because it was 2 years ago that they beat us in Brookings.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Just to be fair, they've
got that going for them.
Oh, Seth. Okay, right. It would have been a home game against Towson anyway. So, all right, I stand corrected. But still, like that game should have never happened. Never should have. Like we should not have been playing Duquesne. That was an unbelievable upset.
Yeah. So then we go to our pod in the bracket, and we've got UC Davis coming into town, coming to Brookings. Credit to Sell. Matt and Kyle talked about it. Bidding enough to get a home game against UC Davis, who has a lot of money.
Have a lot of money.
Not that they necessarily put that money into bidding for playoff games, but we had to put in a pretty decent bid to make sure we got a home game. So let's make it worth it.
Yes,
this may be the only home game we get through the whole playoffs. Yep. So let's show up in big numbers. Bring friends. It's going to be a pretty nice day again for late November. Let's take advantage of it because these don't happen real often.
Yeah, and I think we need to, as a fan base, appreciate what the administration's done with getting these. If it's not going to Fargo or going to Montana, where they're going to be putting in a bid based off of 20,000 fans or more, at that game, then we've won every bid every time. It's been a home game for us. So and let's be honest, let's call a spade here. Our playoff attendance does not demand a bid to win every bid like that. That is the administration stepping up to the plate to do everything they can to help this team win a national title. Is what that is. And as a fan base, we should appreciate that. We should show up and show our appreciation by putting our butts in seats and being loud at the game and doing everything we can in our power to help the team make it. We did great for the majority of the season. It's a brand new season right now. If you're a Jacks fan, don't have a ton of optimism and enough optimism to go to the game. I guess you must be a Vikings fan. I guess I don't know how else to phrase that, because you just no fun at parties or something, because it's the playoffs, baby. And
I mean,
this is such a talented squad we got. Get to the field. Let's be loud and watch some stuff do work.
Right. And like you said, we got to credit the administration and not take it for granted. You look at a team like UNI, they got outbid by an Eastern Washington team who normally doesn't have real good playoff attendance either. So they probably didn't bid a whole lot, and UNI didn't bid enough for a playoff game.
Eastern Washington just had it put to a vote in a study done about dropping classifications or dropping football altogether, and they lost the bid to them.
Right.
And we're beating Richie Rich UC Davis out for a home playoff deal. That's a big damn deal.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, like Patrick says, Davis is friggin' rich. It's impressive y'all bid him. Like I said, I mean, I don't know how much they put into their playoff bids, but they have the money to do it if they want to. So, again, don't take it for granted. Let's fill the Dana on Saturday. Big game. Yes, we have seen what the point spread is. We will tell it to you shortly. Stay tuned.
Hang in there. After our bracket preview's done.
Go to commercial.
And cut to break. Anyways, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Stop on down to Jackrabbit Central for your Black Friday deals. 30% off all online orders. Actually, that's real, guys.
That
Central
real.
Is doing 30% off for Black Friday. I'm just that much of a professional that I'm able to work it into a bit. So
I was impressed by that.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be a joke, and then you really did it.
Yeah, I went all in for that. So, yeah, Jackrabbit Illustrated, big Jackrabbit Central people,
Brendan's the consummate professional, He can do reads with the best of them, even better than Sean.
I mean, honestly, yeah. Well, I mean, who can't do a better read than?
So, for the Brendan must have glitched out there, but
I think he did. Yeah,
that's all right. So, to finish what Brendan was talking about, yes, the bookstore is having a sale, and it's on Black Friday. It is 30% off of this, I believe, everything. Biggest sale of the year, 30% off, December 3rd. The one in store is December 3rd. The Black Friday one is November 26th, 30% off, online only. So go stock up on your Jack's gear on Friday, November 26th for Black Friday. Thank you to Jackrabbit Central for being a sponsor. Matt says Brendan deserves a raise unless he can't finish the read. Then you really screwed the pooch on that one. You were this close to a raise. Now he's trying to get into the stream. Chad's not paying attention. I'll add him.
I'm here. I blame my iPhone in Canada.
I can only do so much at once. Sorry.
And Chad.
Right.
I blame a lot of what happened on Chad. All of it mostly. If
I have an Android phone or what?
Yeah.
You hate seeing the green bubbles?
I hate the color green in general. So if I didn't have your green on my phone, we wouldn't have these tech issues.
So before we get to picks, to finish up the bracket talk, I just wanted to look at the potential path for SDSU. We've kind of talked about the bracket as a whole. but this is an SDSU show, so we're going to talk about SDSU's specific path through it.
Mom, I got a raise.
Obviously, we've got to get past UC Davis first. That is a team that we can't look past. They did had some good wins in the Big Sky. If we do get past them, we would go to Sacramento State, who won the Big Sky. They had some good games, some bad games, if you look at them. So it's kind of hard to tell. The Big Sky was kind of crazy this year. Everybody was beating everybody, and Sac State just kind of ended out on the top. If I remember right, they didn't play. Who did they not play? A couple of the top Big Sky teams.
State.
Yeah,
Sac State didn't play Montana State or Eastern Washington, I believe.
Right. So
yeah, so like two of the best.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, they got the 4 seed. They did win the Big Sky, but they didn't play two of the top 4 teams in the Big Sky. So that, they got kind of lucky there, and their reward for doing that is getting fed potentially us one of, if not the most dangerous unseeded team in the playoffs. So not a great draw for Sac State. Really good draw for us, in my opinion. It will be a tough trip. I mean, we'll have to go out to California to play that game, and then if we win that game, we would potentially have to turn around and fly all the way across the country to Philadelphia to play Villanova, assuming Villanova wins. Right. So that in itself is a very difficult task. If we do that, I still think that it's interesting that we will probably be favored against UC Davis for sure, probably against Sac State, and even probably against Villanova. For an unseeded team to be favored all the way to the quarters is not a usual thing. No. So it just kind of speaks to the potential of this team and how we do have those 3 losses, but we're still a very good team and capable of making a deep run in the playoffs.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right on that. On the travel thing, what is really unique, Davis is 20 miles away from Sac State, their campus. So if we'd have been on the road, we could have periodically walked there throughout the week, right, and made it in less distance than a marathon to get there. But on the whole travel thing, though, on a serious note, if you for work had to fly 1 week to Sacramento, and then the next week you flew to Philly, and then the next week you flew to Texas, and then you flew home, and then you flew back to Texas again, you would be worn out. Mm-hmm. So let's, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, this will be a phenomenal challenge in front of the guys. Mm-hmm. But like you said, we're going to be favored probably up at least till Villanova. So that is there's real opportunity here for this team to become something legendary. There's a real opportunity for this team to take what happened 2 weeks ago and completely take it from being a big victory for the team down south and get to point back at that and go, that was it. That's where it turned around, and we became the first at SDSU. So I can't wait for Saturday, and I can't wait for this all to get started.
Yeah, so that trip to Texas that he was talking about after the trip to Philly would potentially be to Sam Houston. That's assuming that Sam Houston wins their side of the bracket. We mentioned that it'll be interesting to see if Missouri State or Montana State can give him a fight. If Missouri State would happen to beat Sam Houston, we could potentially host the semifinals against Missouri State, which would be pretty cool. But that's wishful thinking. It's probably not going to happen, but it could. So that's, I guess, if you're going to root for another team in the playoffs, root for Missouri State at this point to take down Montana State, and first root for Holy Cross to take down Villanova, because then we could get a home game there for sure, assuming we take care of business at Sac State. But anyway, and then obviously if we would beat potentially Sam Houston, we'd go to Frisco and face whoever made it from the other side of the bracket, which is going to be a dog fight on the other side too. But let's get into the first round matchups. The first one that we're going to pick is the Stephen F. Austin at Incarnate Word game. Incarnate Word is favored by 2.5 points at home. I'll go first.
Ooh.
I'll take Incarnate Word in that one.
All right. Well, I'm going to go Stephen F. Austin. I got to catch up.
Yeah, you do have.
And I got to rep. I got to rep for our boy Dustin, the Rev. So
that's
give me
true.
Stephen F. Austin.
Sorry, Rev. That's my bad.
Just boo. Cardboard Rev is going to be mad at you. You're lucky I drilled him to a wall in my garage.
Yeah. So we'll go opposite on that one, and then we've got UT Martin goes to Missouri State, who is favored by 15 at home. That's a big spread.
Whoa! I'll take the Bears. I look for him to come out in a big way and make a big statement.
Yeah,
in the playoffs for the first time in forever.
Yep. I will too. I think that, I think they have the potential to make a run in this playoffs, and I think they start out with a good win against UT Martin, and then go to Montana State and see what they can do there. Patrick says, "Give me Missouri State, but Martin covers." Yeah, that could potentially happen. I just see Missouri State kind of running away with this one. So we'll both take Missouri State there. And then we'll pick the Florida A&M at Southeastern Louisiana game. Southeastern Louisiana is favored by 12.5. I'll take Southeastern Louisiana there to cover. I think Cole Kelly gets on a roll and plays pretty well in that one.
What was the spread for that game?
12.5. Sela.
Yeah,
favored by 12.5.
I'll take Sela. First time in the playoffs on the road. That's against that high-powered of an offense is a bad recipe, I think. So I'll take the offensive firepower in that first round.
Yep. Who's hosting that one? Southeastern Louisiana is hosting that one. If you look at the bracket, all the bottom teams are the home teams, which it was kind of silly how they didn't make that evident. Even when they were like doing the selection, they were like, these two teams play each other, and then like they mentioned a couple times like, oh, they're hosting, but like why wouldn't you put it in the graphic? And then they called NDSU North Dakota, which is hilarious.
Oh god, that's funny. I love it.
But it's
funny when it's not us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh my god, if they would have popped up San Diego State, I would have lost my mind.
Oh, I'd have just blew my lid. I'd have been throwing a tantrum on Twitter for like a week.
Or even just like accidentally put South Dakota there, and then like USD comes up later in the bracket, and then we're all confused. Anyway, I'll leave it to you
obviously we're better at throwing tantrums because only we have gotten Scott Van Pelt to wear a net hat on and all our swag on his show. So
right. It would have been better like if UND was a potential seed and they were like should have been like a 5 or 6 seed, and then
my god,
I don't know.
Fargo and burned to the ground.
Right. Yeah. Dallas says, "How dare they disrespect the most important team in football?" Exactly. Patrick says, "If it's close, he thinks Florida A&M wins, but but he says, give me Sela coming off the tough loss." The next game we've got is in that quadrant is Northern Iowa goes to Eastern Washington. Eastern Washington is favored only by 3.5 in this one. For against a team that was probably the last team in the playoffs. So that tells you how tough UNI is.
I will take the Eagles at home on the Inferno. They're just too good there.
I will too. I think UNI has a potential to give them some problems, but I think Barrier is going to be too much. And I'll take Eastern Washington as well. Then we'll go to the quadrant, JMU's quadrant NDSU's quadrant with Davidson going to Kennesaw State. This is the biggest spread of the weekend. Kennesaw State is favored by 23.5.
Yeah, but I'll take Kennesaw anyways.
I think I will too. I don't think there's any way that Davidson puts up a fight there.
Well, that's a tough one because they both run the triple.
Yeah.
So that game's going to go quick. It's
That's
entirely
true.
possible.
It's gonna be tough to
that
pull
if
away that
Davidson
far.
scores a touchdown, it could be 24-7, and they don't cover because they just burned the whole game away running the ball. I'm going to stick with my first answer. Yeah. Can't go 0-9 twice, right? Especially when you're only picking 8 games.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. All right. And Kennesaw State does have a chip on their shoulder. I think, it's dumb, but they see some of the rankings where they're ranked like in the top 8, and they're like, oh, we should have got a seed. And apparently the rankings don't matter. Well, some of them don't matter at all. So, anyway.
The rankings don't matter. You're right. They don't. They should listen to us more because I think we said like 4 or 5 times this year that the rankings don't matter. The committee has their own. But
right. Exactly. So, and then the other game in that quadrant is Southern Illinois going to USD. USD, like you said, that's the first time they've hosted a playoff game. Is it in the D1 era for sure?
It's since 1986.
86. That's a while ago. I wasn't born then.
No.
So congrats to them. But the unfortunate part is they're home dogs. The SIU is favored by 2.5 at USD.
That's crazy.
Are we calling this one a dog fight? Just
there you go. Very nice.
That's our type of comedy right there. I'll take. I'm just going to close my eyes and go. I'm going to choose USD because I hope I'm bad luck.
I'll take Southern Illinois. I think that they'll bounce back, and I think USD. I mean, they're not getting a break after playing SDSU and NDSU back to back. That's tough to come off of. So I'll take Southern Illinois. Apparently, they didn't expend much energy against Youngstown State, so they'll probably be well rested.
Right. Oh, it's brutal.
And then we've got our quadrant. Sacred Heart goes to Holy Cross. Like you said, Holy Cross is likely to win that one, but will they cover the spread? They're favored by 20.
Oof. I think they will. I think they will. Give me Holy Cross.
All right. I'll go opposite on this one. I think that's too many points. And then we've got the big one. UC Davis comes to SDSU. I know you don't know the spread on this one, so I'm going to make you guess it.
It's going to be every time I've guessed just what I think would be ridiculous, but not too ridiculous. I've been close all year, so I am going to go and say we are favored by 16.5 points.
So you say 16.5. Chad in the little video down there says 15. I think he said. Well, you're very, very close. We're favored by 17.
Wow,
17
I'm
exactly.
Good at this. How can I pick the spreads like that, but I can't pick the right teams? This is stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. If we had a game where you guessed the spreads, you'd be great at it. But
I know.
But no. So yeah, we're favored by 17 at home. Which, again, doesn't – I mean, it means something. It means we should win. That's what it means. But we've seen against Southern Illinois, UNI, USD, we were favored against all 3 of those teams, and we ended up losing the game outright. Not just not covering. We lost the game outright. I would have to go back and look, but I think that the only game that we were favored in and didn't cover was against UND this last game. I'm saying when we won. The only game that we won and didn't cover the spread was against UND. And so 17's tough. UC Davis is a decent Big Sky team. They've got some weapons. If you're looking for a breakdown, go watch Matt and Kyle's show. They break down UC Davis well. I think our guys are going to be highly motivated. I think they had a very tough Missouri Valley schedule, and now we finally get to play some teams that aren't in the Missouri Valley, some teams that aren't familiar with us, and I think we have a good game here and we'll win by, I'll say 20.
I thought you were going to pick a score, and I was going to drive back to South Dakota to throw something at you. You took the words right out of my mouth. Those games we lost, but those were the familiar teams who are extremely familiar with what we do, how we play. Now it's 1 week a lead up for someone to plan for us, and that's flipped for us as well. But I do think the talent tends to shine through in games like that. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Jacks in this game. Hopefully we have a great playoff crowd. Should be beautiful weather. And hopefully it's just raucous enough to drive UC Davis nuts.
Yep. So Phil the Dana, we're both taking SDSU to cover, which is dangerous, but I do think I think we'll have a good game. We'll I'm not going to make a score prediction.
Where's Kenny Loggins when you need him?
Last thing we're going to do is we're going to pick our picks to make it to Frisco. I'll go first. I'll take SDSU on our half. And as Brendan alluded to, I'm taking Eastern Washington to go on a big run. He thinks I'm ridiculous. Well, but I think that they have a good chance of beating UNI. I think that Montana, they are playing well right now. But I think Eastern Washington beats Montana. It's a tough path. I'll say that. It is a tough path. But I think? Yeah, I think. But I think Barry is that good. I think he's got the potential to go off in the playoffs. And so, I'll take them to make a run. Like you said, it's going to be a legendary run. Taking down UNI, going to Montana, to JMU, potentially to Fargo. But I don't know. That's my pick. What do you got?
I just want you to recognize what you're picking. You're picking something that hasn't happened since 2004 on both sides of the bracket.
Twice, yes.
And one side of the bracket,
hey man,
if you look at the route they have to go, would be through every one of what every FCS fan off the top of their heads. If you said, name the top 3 toughest places to play on the road in the FCS, go. They would go Fargo, Bridgeforth, Montana. And they have to play at all of them.
I know it's tough.
Play at all of them.
We've talked all year.
All of them.
We've talked all year.
They lost every team they've lost to has been a really good offensive. They're a really good defensive team with a good rushing attack. And that's what all those teams that you're picking them over are. So,
I'm just saying. I
just want you to know what horse you're picking in this race. Okay.
I know that.
I'm going marker game 2.0.
That would be a lot of fun.
That would be a lot of fun.
Before we move on from my pick, we've said all year that there's a lot of parity in the FCS. If something crazy like that's going to happen, it's this year. I think that the top 15, maybe 12, there's a lot of parity in there, more so than ever. And so that's kind of my backing for that pick. And also, I just want to get into Kyler Neal's good graces. Wow.
Why? What did he threaten your family?
No.
Twice you're being held hostage.
By Kyler. No. I do. I think they go on a run. We'll see. They could lose to North. I mean, they're only favored by 2.5. They could lose in Northern Iowa this weekend, or 3.5. But we'll Patrick's on my side. He's all.
I'm sensing Patrick is a Eastern Washington fan, especially since he said he was going to be at the game on Saturday.
Get that feel.
I think the correct term is Ewu.
No, we never say that again on this podcast. Never again. We're not those kind of people.
All right. Well, I got to get going to the Jacks game at the Pentagon. Brendan's got to go eat
I got family and visitors, so
eat some supper. We don't have time to talk about the Missouri Valley Honors. What is this? The offensive player
Missouri
of the year?
State quarterback was the Missouri State quarterback, Jason Shelley. We don't have time to be mad about this.
I just thought I'd throw it up. So
okay, that's fine. We can talk about it next week.
Good Lord. We'll talk about this next week.
Good Lord is right.
I got to go.
So. All right, I do too. Like always, go big, go blue,
go Jacks.
Go Jacks. Well, now he's early. Look at this guy.